Hello, everybody. Today, I want to give you an education around the terminology of macronutrients and give you a little bit of an education and how I can actually give you value in what macronutrients are and how you can find the macronutrients that's probably specific to you. Because what really would matter is you finding a personalized approach that would be specific to you and aligns with your culture and aligns with your probably values and what you're doing in your own exercise. For any that don't know me, my name is Ray McKenna. I've been in the fitness industry for over 17 years. I've worked in 10 plus gyms throughout the world, and I've done a lot of education. I still study the research and still work inside of the fitness industry today. So I want to just give you on macronutrients. So basically, what macronutrients really are, they're just a substance that's required for us to be able to that provide us energy for our cells every day, provide us energy for like muscle contraction, for doing day-to-day tasks, for energy production in the body, for the creation of ATP, which is an energy source for muscle contraction. And what the basic three most common macronutrients that we hear, but although alcohol would be a macronutrient also, would be carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. I would possibly put water in there too, but I'm going to cover three of them today from protein, carbohydrates, and fats. So think of protein as to be able to repair muscle tissue, to be able to build new muscle tissue, to be able to what else protein helps do with weight training is it helps with the transportation of carbohydrates into your muscle tissue, but it also helps with enzymes in the body too, and it is possibly one of the number one macronutrients for your immune system. So it definitely helps with your immune system. I just want to make sure that this is on. Yeah, it's working. Helps with your immune. Perfect. And the other thing about protein is it's highly satiating. But I've looked into the research from years of all the protein research done. And a lot would always think that if I eat excessive amounts of protein, I'll get more benefits. But there is possibly a threshold of like zero point 0.8 to 1 grams per pound of lean body mass. But what I use with a lot of clients when I'm coaching and coaching in general is if we just even done like 1 gram per pound of weight and not stressed over it too much, we just because like you got to look at like a lot of these tracking of like body composition measurements have a lot of inaccuracies as it is. So it can be a little bit difficult to tell exact accuracy of like lean body mass anyhow. So if you done 1 gram per pound, I think that would add benefits to you. Sorry for all the moving. I'm in a very awkward place. So that would give you possibly enough for you to be able to have enough sufficient amount of protein. Before we dive into it, probably going into like animal based proteins versus vegan and vegetarian based proteins. Again, there's been a lot of research done on that today, whereas before in the past there was research done like where they showed like proteins from vegan and vegetarian based proteins that I think about 80% of it was only absorbed in the gut, and whereas animal based proteins absorb at 90 to 95%, possibly a lot more higher. But them studies have been done later in the years where like you can just have your protein sources from either vegan, vegetarian, or animal based protein. Again, it's whatever specific to you and whatever works for you and whatever like I don't even like use the word diet, but whatever you're kind of following, I would suggest that you do that. What I would do is what I would look into if you were on a ketogenic diet and you were using a ketogenic diet, excessive amount of protein can inhibit ketosis, so it can prevent you from being able to go into ketosis. But remember, going into ketosis and like adapting to fat adaptation, takes a couple of weeks anyhow. But like just being very, very careful of like excessive amount of proteins, because excessive amount of proteins also becomes glucose. That's what the body will do with excessive amount of protein, but it also has other stuff that will do with excessive amount of proteins. But what the whole point I'm trying to make is that when you go on a ketogenic diet, if you are on that, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get your body to use ketones for fuel. But the other thing that you're trying to do is you're trying to actually teach your body how to not use glucose. But when you teach your body how not to use glucose, because glucose is the primary fuel source for the brain, what happens is you will end up just using the using the excessive amounts of protein for glucose anyhow, but also your body does make glucose from muscle tissue also, and its own muscle stores. And this is why you probably see when people lose a lot of weight, they probably haven't got a weight training program, they probably not set up correctly, that they lose a load of weight, and they also lose a lot of muscle too. They lose a lot of bone mineral density also, and they also lose a lot of weight, which is like probably carbohydrates from the muscles, carbohydrates from the liver. But let's get off protein for now. But just the key takeaways of protein is find probably 1 gram per pound of weight specific to you. Carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are essential for the body because they're the primary source of fuel for the body that you're probably used to using right now. Now, the thing about carbohydrates is you gotta look into, like, a lot of people that say like how much carbohydrates will I take in, what kind of carbohydrates will I take in. So you gotta look at like carbohydrates first, right? The first most important thing of them, right, is dietary. A lot of carbohydrates, which I would call smart carbohydrates, from the philosophy of precision nutrition, who are an amazing nutrition company that I did do a lot of qualifications with. But smart, like, you kind of look into like the carbohydrates that you're probably eating that would be probably keeping you more satiated, that would probably be keeping you more full, would be probably very, very beneficial for your gut microbiome. And a lot of like carbohydrates, like for example, sweet potatoes, lentils, beans, quinoa, quinoa, if any of you don't know what it is, say white potato, ferment, like good quality breads that you even have nowadays, and even like milk and dairy products have carbohydrates from lactose. Like lactose is a carbohydrate. So basically, what lactose is, it is a carbohydrate, but the thing is, like, the sugars inside the milk are also carbohydrates too. So let's say you're looking into all these carbohydrates from these foods. The thing is that a lot of these also contain other good beneficial nutrients. Like, a lot of them have different kinds of vitamins and minerals. A lot of them have dietary fiber. So a lot of them, and like dietary fiber is very, very healthy for your gut microbiome. It's very healthy for digestion, and it helps. What happens is dietary fiber that can't be digested in the intestines will go into the large intestines, and it goes and it produces, it helps with the production of these short chain fatty acids. And what these do is these are very, very healthy for prevention of acute, chronic, systemic inflammation, but they also help with the production of energy in the body also. So when you look into studies on high levels of short chain fatty acids inside the people, usually has a correlation and relationship with an all over good gut diversity, which is a healthy gut microbiome. So that's when you see the production, when you see these short chain fatty acids. They are called propionate, acetate, and butyrate. I think that's how you pronounce it. So this is what happens when you look into some kind of carbohydrates. Now, let's say you'd say to me, you're probably going to say, right, sugar is the enemy, sugar is bad. Realistically, I have, if I just wanted a copy, I have a video broke down on the research done on sugar. And when you actually look at like sugar, which will probably, like, it's like you have this glycemic index in your body. Like, it's an increase of the rates at which the sugar response, which your blood glucose increases. And when you get rapid rises in that and it keeps dipping all the time, and then you go into hypoglycemia, and then that chances of you probably overeating more and more food because you're feeling tired and fatigued after getting that big dip in sugar. Therefore, you probably think that like, oh, sugar is bad, sugar is terrible, and sugar is causing me all these problems, when it's possibly that like you are probably overeating that nutrient. You are overeating that food from probably not feeling satiated from it, and possibly you cannot control your own self after eating probably something that we would call, what would we call sugar these days? Like jellies, would it be? Donuts, cakes, a little bit of ice cream, stuff like that. And chances are that you could be somebody that probably just overeats that anytime that you eat it, and you probably can't practice a little bit of self control, and therefore you probably just blame the sugar, when like sugar is metabolized in the body the same way as other carbohydrates. That's, I know fructose gets absorbed in the liver and gets broken down in the liver, but also the other thing is that like so do fruits, but it takes an awful lot of probably sugar to start even going into de novo lipogenesis, which is the conversion of carbohydrates to fats. Staying on carbohydrates just again, then you look into stuff like, let's say you're an individual who has, say for example, IBS, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, vomiting, digestive issues, gut issues, can't absorb and digest certain foods. Because like what happens is like they're called FODMAPs, which are fermentable carbohydrates and sugar alcohols, and a lot of people struggle with digesting these and absorbing them. But what you'll tend to do is you just tend to possibly blame carbohydrates right away, when you could look into your training. You could look into the exercise that you're doing. Like for example, high intensity exercise has been shown in a couple of studies to increase gut permeability, which is inflammation towards the gut microbiome, affects digestion, affects absorption of nutrients. I'm not saying that in absolutes that high intensity exercise will do that, but in a fasted state, it's been shown to do that. So that could be some things. You could look into the amount of training you're doing, the amount of fatigue, the amount of stress that you have. Are you actually following a training program that's setting you up to be able to actually even get results? So that these could be things that you could looking into, like where is the symptoms coming from with the gut microbiota, before blaming carbohydrates and just thinking that you're going to cut them out of your diet. The other, because like if you did look into it based on like certain stuff, like certain different kind of foods, like different kinds of carbohydrates are very very digestible and easy on the gut microbiome. For an example, based on Monash University, which is where I get a lot of resources from with the gut microbiome and looking at the foods that they be calculating and using all the time. Like 60 grams of carb or 60 grams of oatmeal. Oatmeal also has beta glucan, which is very, very healthy, and a prebiotic that's very healthy for the gut microbiome. And you can't really get that in other foods. But when you have that, 60 grams is a little bit more better absorbed than 100 grams in people with gut issues. For another example would be like 100 grams of sweet potato would be probably more tolerable and digestible than 400 grams. That's with somebody with gut issues. Whereas if you look into foods like buckwheat, which also has a lot of great nutrients in it, that like 100 to 120 grams could be quite absorbed really, really well with people with IBS. And this is based on them knowing their own body, how they feel after it. They notice the symptoms too, and you could too. So the whole point I'm trying to make is like carbohydrates are not bad. They're a macronutrients which are quite essential. They're packed with loads of different polyphenols. They're packed also with other like beta carotenoids, flavonoids, and loads of different antioxidants inside of them, which have been shown massively for brain health, fighting off inflammation, recovery from training, loads of different stuff that we can speak about. And like if you look at even into like glycogen, which comes from carbohydrates in general, and shown on its recovery towards training, improvement of training adaptations, also controlling or preventing long term inflammation, short term inflammation, improving recovery to training, improving insulin sensitivity in individuals. They're brilliant. So what I'd be looking into is, because we're breaking down macronutrients, is like what is the amount of energy intake that you're taking in on a day-to-day basis, on a week-to-week basis, because what you take in doesn't just matter over a day or over a week. It can make a difference over 2 weeks, over 3 weeks. And look into the foods that you're eating that are possibly causing you to overeat a lot. I just want to break down one more thing, and based on Kevin Hall, who was a researcher out in America, and even when you look into all the research he's ever done, and like what he didn't do when he looked into his review of the research on carbohydrates, the fats, and the same as Stephen Gainey, who was the writer of The Hungry Brain, which I give that book to a lot of clients if they want to read it so they understand energy expenditure, which is the amount of energy that you expand from your resting metabolism, your non-exercise metabolism, your the foods that you eat, diet-induced metabolism, and then exercise metabolism, and like how finding out like how much energy that an individual is expanding and how much you need, and it's actually eating above excessive amount of energy expenditure, which is really what causes weight gain, because it's being looked at like, right, when you go on a low carbohydrate diet and you go on a low fat diet, like which one is the worst? Because we have this kind of debate in the fitness industry, and you look into all the research that's ever done on a randomized controlled trials, basically. And look, you're more than welcome to have a copy of them papers if you're gonna do that, but please read them if you want them. I can share them with you. You can drop me a message at any time. And if you look into them, like basically what happens is it kind of shows that like it's actually like don't just, and I don't get the whole lot of this video calories in versus calories out, because it's not just about that. The thing about energy intake is it either must be stored or it must be destroyed. So energy intake does matter calories, right? When it comes to that, for people that's to lose weight, because remember, if you lose weight, it's anti-inflammatory. It's also very, very healthy for you. So if you look in, there's no really difference in weight loss when you look at carbohydrates and fats. But when you look into the weight gain studies, there's more actually weight gain from higher fat diets, but it's from excessive amount of calories as well. But also that like the excessive amount of carbohydrates doesn't really show much weight gain. So why did we always looking at, and I'm like, am I losing something in this industry after being in it? That like, because I never really see carbs being bad, and even looking into Javier Gonzalez's work and all of his recent paper, it never really showed carbohydrates causing much problems whatsoever, and that's even from like sugar sweetened beverages, because that showed that when they had polyphenols in it, which are antioxidants, that like it slowed the response of, I think it was the glycemic response. Let's get into fats now. The thing about fats are very important for your body. They're very important for the absorption of vitamins A, D, E, and K. They are also very, very important for, I would say, systemic and long-term inflammation prevention. And you can have a combination of different fats, from monounsaturated fats, polyunsaturated fats, which polyunsaturated fats, some of them will give you a combination of omega-3. Since I've looked at the last research on omega-3, I do know that like 2 to 3 servings of good fish would give you enough omega-3 over a week. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. That's just what I've seen in the research of late. Then if you would look into that, that's one thing. You have to look into all these salmons and all these kind of omega-3 foods, like where are they coming from, how long are they in these tins, are they still keeping the nutrient availability inside of what's inside of the tins, where stuff is coming from. We also then got to look into you can get great like omega threes from different kinds of foods. I know walnuts have omega threes. I think chia seeds have omega threes. I'm sure hemp seeds have omega threes. I'm sure like different kinds of fish, like over here in Spain, you have sardines, mackerel, all the different kinds of fish that you can eat. And then you can have like good monounsaturated fats and then some combination of saturated fats. So for an example, I'm just going to give you a little bit of just going to break something down real quick. You're more than welcome to look at these studies too. So there's a thing called the food matrix, which the food matrix is having like the way like we're human beings, and if you're like me, we probably eat meals like like we're not going around with calorie trackers all day. Like we're probably eating meals like we probably eat like dinners with our families and dinners with our friends, and you eat probably meals. And when you eat like a meal with say like a combination of like say protein, carbohydrates, fats, and probably some fruits or vegetables, whatever you're probably eating, it's kind of like a food matrix. There's a combination of different nutrients, there's different absorption rates from this meal, and that's being shown in research massively to have great positive effects or positive benefits on what I'm going to share with you right now. For an example, there was studies done on high levels of saturated fats, and the high levels of saturated fats, I think, increase cholesterol, blood cholesterol levels. So basically, then what happened was, like, if you look into like, then when they use like with food matrix, which is a combination of like foods controlled in meals with even 30% saturated fats, it showed reversed diabetes. It showed better, good, positive cholesterol levels in human beings. But this is probably also because we're using foods in combinations of like a food matrix. And that's why I'm saying to you today, like if you looked into say, how can you add macronutrients specific to you? You could look into something like this, like setting yourself up with a meal plan, all right? And you could look into a meal plan that you're going to set that will work for you and work for your lifestyle. Let's say, I'll give this an example. You might eat 3 times a day. Whether you eat two, one, this is totally up to you. But let's say you eat 3 times a day, which can also, when you do set a meal time, can also have an improvement in circadian rhythms, which is your body's 24-hour clock. So that can also improve too. So say you're looking into that, right? So you look into that, you choose your meal plan wherever you do. And you might be somebody that gets up in the morning and you might say to yourself, like, right, I have to get out the door. I've got to get out and meet. I've got to get the kids ready. I'm really, really busy. So a smoothie might work for you. And you might say in that smoothie, you possibly might look at that and say, right, I'm going to have a 2 scoops of protein, or I'm going to have like milk instead of the protein, some Greek yogurt just for a protein source. And then you might look into, right, I might have 200 to 300 grams of berries, get some antioxidants into me first thing in the morning, something really, really low carb, and then possibly throw in some spinach for like, that's only if you like, you didn't see it, just to get some of your greens into you. Also has vitamin K, also very, very healthy for the gut microbiome. And then you might have that in a smoothie. You might put a bit of flavour in. You might throw some walnuts for the omega three, some monounsaturated fats right away. Whatever. You might have a bit of dark chocolate in that. And then like that's your first meal. And then like some days when you probably don't want that meal, you might change that to oatmeal. But in the same, you might put protein inside of that. You might put some berries inside of it. You might put like some honey in it. Some probably even I'd probably go for an organic honey. And the reason why is just to know that you're definitely getting the right amount of nutrients and the benefits from honey too, whatever you put in that. And that might be your first meal, right? And you might combine that throughout the week. And then like during the day, you might say, right, I'm gonna have a meal. Like you might be someone that has a busy job. Let's say you have a busy job and you might have to eat out with your friends every day or your colleagues. First off, you could find a meal that works for you when you're out and when you're with your colleagues and like when you're doing that and make that work for you. to the best of your ability, or you may just, and that could be in like a little place, like for an example, a lot of people have food courts, or just let's say I speak to the Irish community. So for now, or I even speak to the Spanish community where I am, although I've lived in Australia, Canada, United Kingdom, and so many different places, I'll just base on that. So a lot of people where I coach, I know that they can easily get access to a wrap, like like a tortilla wrap, and we probably look for a brown one, which will probably have higher fiber, keep them a little bit fuller. And I would teach them how to probably make that wrap. You get me? During education, how we can add like probably vegetables, some cheese, some meat for proteins, and we could probably change the behavior of having a piece of fruit or a yogurt after it, or whatever, a packet of popcorn, even a diet soda. Some people just probably want to have regular water, but teaching you how to actually make your nutrition work for you on the go, because like at the end of the day, calories matter, but also macronutrients to fit inside of that, and a healthy gut microbiome, and you to be able to be satiated and stay full. Because usually when you have these in check, what happens is when you have exercise training with this that's specific, like the rest falls into place. You start to get fitter, you start to get healthier, you start to get stronger, your performance in the gym goes up, and your body fat starts to go down, and your muscle tissue starts to grow with patience and consistency and the right strategy to do that. So then you have the lunch, then you might go into like in the you might have a snack throughout the day, even if you need it. And that might be something like two pieces of fruit on the go. It might be a handful of nuts. It might be like a Lara bar, which is a date bar with, I think, has nuts or something in it. They're quite popular. They're called Naked over here in Spain. You could have like some vegetable sticks. You could have like low fat Greek yogurt, whatever you wanted, whatever's most easy for you. It's about you learning how to make this work for you, specific over the long duration of time, and how to incorporate a good food matrix and macronutrients specific to you on a day to day basis. So the last one then is you come home, you might have your dinner with your family, you might have your dinner with your friends, and that might be something different every week. It might be that 2 times a week you might have salmon or high omega-3 fish with your family. You might combine that. You might have that with some vegetables, some potatoes, some rice, whatever way you can set that up for you. After that, you might have a glass of. I'm not influencing alcohol on anybody either, but you might have one glass of red wine with your husband, your wife, your friends, your family, or you might even have 200 calories or 300 calories of ice cream. You might just eat a little bit of dessert with your family and not worry about it too much, because your breakfast, lunch, snacks, dinner, exercise, steps, everything else is going really, really well that day. You're coming home in the evening, you're probably sitting down after a long day, and you don't want to feel that you don't want to be able to have something nice and tasty. Because remember, this is you having to set yourself up for a long duration of time and long term. And this even gives you a great starting point and great setup to what you're doing. Makes sense? Like it makes it a little bit more enjoyable and a little bit more realistic for you also. So you have that, and then like you might also go and 1 to 2 nights a week, you might have a takeaway that you eat with your friends and your family. You might go to Five Guys once a week with your friends and family. You might go for a Chinese. You might go for a Thai meal. You might go for sushi with your friends. You might go for something like that. But you know how to go out there and have this in a way that you know how to probably eat until you're satisfied, eat until you're full, and more or less enjoy the social event rather than going out and having this big, huge cheat day and cheat meals all the time, that the consequences of that, the negative effects on it, first off, it's like that, like you're already gearing up for this all week. A lot of people gear up for a cheat meal all week. The whole week becomes a cheat meal, and they're actually setting themselves up for a binge rather than incorporating a flexible approach and saying to yourself, right, I'm going to have two free meals a week. I might even have one. I might even have none. I mightn't even have any. But I'm not gonna leave myself where thinking that I'm not allowed to do that or that my plan doesn't allow me to do that. You're gonna set yourself up and you're gonna say to yourself, well, I'm gonna be able to go out and do this because I'm in this for the long term. I'm in this fitness game and this fitness journey to improve my health over a long duration of time. And I would tell you with absolute certainty, nearly, and that's, well, there's nothing certain, that like that is how possibly to incorporate a flexible approach to macronutrients inside your nutrition based on your goals. And then if you even did eventually want to lose weight, gain weight, you can just manipulate macronutrients and micronutrients. And what I do is I teach people then how to actually use what I'll just real quick, lower palatability foods with high volume of food and lower calories. So it goes low palatability, which means there, because like for example, do you know when you eat high palatability foods that are really really tasty? Like a lot of these are very very calorie dense. Like they just got a lot of calories in them for the weight that they have, and it's so easier to overeat them, isn't it? So we just learn how to manipulate them and how to change them and have higher volume foods which are higher amounts with less calories and also very satiating with also being what's the word that I'm looking for? We're also being low palatable. So low palatable, high volume, high satiating that are also lower calorie. And this is what you can just do and even still be able to eat out, still be able to eat with your family and friends and have a life and still be able to get the results that you want. I hope you got value out of this breaking down macronutrients in simple terms. If you ever have any questions, drop me a message at any time. And I really hope that you got value out of it. And I'll speak to you soon.